Have you ever noticed how some people seem to grow more powerful the quieter they become? They don't argue. They don't defend themselves. They don't rush to explain, to justify, to prove a single thing. They simply go quiet, and somehow, in that silence, the entire room rearranges itself around them. People lean in. People wonder. People who were so certain of themselves a moment ago suddenly feel the ground shift beneath their feet. That is not an accident. That is not some charisma you were either born with or born without. That is a law of the human psyche that almost no one understands, and the few who do understand it move through the world with a kind of power that the loud will never touch. And here is the uncomfortable truth I want to begin with, the truth that this entire video is going to unfold for you slowly and deliberately. Most of the power you have given away in your life, you gave away through your own mouth, through your need to respond, through your need to be understood, through that desperate, exhausting compulsion to explain yourself to people who had already decided not to listen. Every time you reacted, you handed someone the controls. Every time you defended yourself, you confirmed that their words had found their target. Every time you broke your silence to manage how someone else felt about you, you betrayed yourself just a little more. There is an old line from the depth psychology tradition, and it cuts to the center of everything we are about to do. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. And what you are about to discover is that silence, real, conscious, chosen silence, is the doorway between those two states. It is the moment you stop looking outside for validation, for reaction, for proof that you matter, and you finally turn inward, where the only power that can never be taken from you has been waiting this whole time. So let me ask you something, and I want you to actually feel the answer before you hear the rest of this. When was the last time you stayed silent and it cost you nothing, but instead, it gave you everything? When was the last time you watched someone wait for your reaction, and you simply did not give it, and you felt that strange, electric stillness settle over the moment? If you cannot remember, that is exactly why you are here. Because you have been taught your entire life that your voice is your power. And that is the most beautiful lie anyone ever told you. Let's begin with what your words are actually doing when you speak. You think you are communicating. You think you are connecting, defending, clarifying, being understood. But underneath all of that, on a level the conscious mind rarely sees, something else is happening. Every word you speak is information. Every sentence you offer is a map. When you explain yourself, you are showing people exactly what you care about. When you defend yourself, you are pointing directly at your wounds and saying, here, this is where it hurts, this is the soft place, this is where you can reach me. And the people who want to control you, consciously or not, are taking notes the entire time. The deepest psychology understood the human psyche as an energy system, not a metaphor, an actual system with a finite amount of force flowing through it. They called it psychic energy, and they were clear about one thing: that energy does not multiply when you spend it. It depletes. Every reaction, every justification, every late-night argument you replay in your head 100 times, all of it draws from the same well. And most people live their entire lives with that well running dry, wondering why they feel so tired, so hollow, so strangely empty even when nothing is technically wrong. They call it stress. They call it burnout. They call it bad luck. But it is none of those things. It is a person who has been pouring their inner force into every open mouth that asked for it, and keeping none of it for themselves. Here is what nobody told you with this clarity. The compulsion to respond is not strength. It is a wound. It comes from somewhere deep, from a child who learned that to be silent was to be ignored, that to go unheard was to go unloved, that the only way to exist in the eyes of others was to react, to perform, to fill every silence with proof that you were there. And so you grew up believing that your voice was your survival, that if you stopped explaining, people would misunderstand you forever, that if you stopped defending yourself, the accusations would become true, that if you went quiet, you would disappear. But the opposite is what actually happens. And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because it forces you to look at how much of your life you have spent speaking out of fear and calling it honesty, speaking out of insecurity and calling it openness, speaking out of a desperate need for control and calling it just trying to clear things up. The truth is that the more you say, the smaller you become. The more you reveal, the more handles you hand to people who were looking for somewhere to grip. And the more you react, the more you confirm a simple, brutal fact: that you can be moved, that you can be reached, that somewhere inside you there is a button, and they have just learned exactly where it is. There is a principle worth carving into your mind. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. Sit with that for a moment, because it cuts both ways. When you cannot stay silent, when someone's comment lives in your chest for 3 days, when a single look pulls a reaction out of you that you did not choose, that irritation is not really about them. It is a message from a part of you that has not been made conscious yet. It is the unintegrated wound, lighting up, telling you exactly where you are still owned. And as long as you keep reacting, you will keep believing the problem is out there, in their behavior, in their words. You will never turn around and see that the real work was always inside you. If any part of this is starting to land for you, if you can feel the truth of it pressing somewhere uncomfortable, take 1 second right now and subscribe to this channel. Not because I'm asking, because the work we do here goes deeper than the noise, and you are clearly someone who is ready for the deeper layer. Hit subscribe and let's keep descending. Because what comes next is the part most people are not ready to hear. Let's talk about the noise. We live in a world that has confused volume with value. The loudest voice in the room is mistaken for the strongest. The person who always has a comeback is praised as quick, sharp, formidable. The one who never lets an insult pass, who answers every provocation, who fires back at every slight, that person is called confident. And so, slowly, without ever choosing it, you absorbed the lesson. That to be silent is to lose. That to let something go is to back down. That a person of substance always has something to say. But look closer at the people who actually hold power. Real power, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. They are not the loudest. They are almost never the loudest. They speak rarely, and when they do, the words land like stones dropped into still water, because they have not wasted their voice on 1,000 pointless ripples. Their silence has given their words weight. Their restraint has given their presence gravity. While everyone else was emptying themselves into every conversation, they were holding something back. And that something is exactly what the rest of the room can feel but cannot name. You have mistaken being heard for being valued. This is one of the deepest confusions of the modern psyche, and it runs through almost everything you do. You believe that if you can just explain yourself clearly enough, people will finally understand, and in that understanding you will finally feel safe, seen, at peace. So you keep talking, you keep clarifying, you keep offering more words, more context, more of yourself, certain that the next sentence will be the one that closes the gap. But the gap does not close. It widens. Because the people who were never going to understand you do not need more information. They need you to stop. And the people who were always going to understand you needed almost none of it in the first place. As one of the great mappers of the inner world observed, loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. And here is the part that wounds. Most of your talking has been a desperate attempt to escape exactly that loneliness, to be understood, to be met, to finally feel that someone on the other side of your words actually received you. But you cannot talk your way out of that loneliness. You can only sit with it, descend into it, and discover on the other side of it the one relationship that was always the source of your strength, the relationship with yourself. The relationship that you abandoned every single time you turned outward to be validated instead of inward to be whole. There is an addiction here, and we should name it for what it is: the addiction to responding. The little hit of relief you get when you finally say the thing, when you finally set the record straight, when you finally let them know how you feel. Feels like release, feels like power, but it is the same release a gambler feels. Momentary, false, and followed immediately by the quiet sense that you gave away more than you won. Because in the moment you responded, you proved to them that they still had access. You proved that the connection between their action and your reaction was still live. And a connection that is live is a connection that can be used. Now imagine, just imagine what happens when that connection goes dead. When the button is pressed and nothing lights up. When the provocation is thrown and it hits nothing but air. We are about to enter the part of this that explains why your silence does not just protect you. It genuinely unsettles the people who relied on your reactions. Why the quietest thing you can do is also the most destabilizing. Stay with me, because this is where silence stops being a defense and becomes something far more powerful. Here is what most people will never understand about silence. It takes away the one thing the other person cannot function without: control of the narrative. When you respond, you stay inside their story. You become a character in the drama they are directing. They say the line, you say yours, the scene plays out exactly as they expected, and even if you win the exchange, you lost because you agreed to be in the play at all. But when you go silent, truly silent, not sulking, not withholding, but genuinely unmoved, you walk off the stage entirely. And suddenly there is no scene. There is no drama. There is just a person standing there with a script in their hand and no one to perform it with. The human brain is built around feedback. We act and we wait for the result. We push and we expect resistance. This is so deep in us that when the expected reaction does not come, the mind cannot let it go. It loops. It replays. It searches for the closure that silence refuses to provide. So when someone tries to provoke you and you give them nothing, no anger, no defense, no flicker of being affected, you have not ended the interaction for them. You have left it open forever. They will lie awake turning it over. They will wonder what it meant. They will question whether you even noticed, whether you cared, whether you think so little of them that their best shot was not even worth a response. And all of that mental energy they are now burning is energy they are spending on you, while you have already moved on, spending nothing on them at all. Psychology gave us the key to this, and it is one of the most important ideas ever uncovered. It is called projection. What we cannot face in ourselves, we cast onto others. The parts of us we have rejected, denied, buried in the dark. There is a name for that too. It is called the shadow, and it does not disappear when we bury it. It finds a screen, and it projects itself onto the people around us. This is why some people are so threatened by your calm. This is why your stillness provokes a reaction far out of proportion to anything you actually did. Because your silence becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, they are forced to see the noise inside themselves, the insecurity, the neediness, the desperate hunger for a reaction that would prove they matter. You did not put that there. You simply stopped giving them somewhere else to look. There is a line that has survived precisely because it is true. We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And your silence forces exactly that confrontation onto the people around you, but only onto the ones who were using your reactions to avoid their own darkness. The friend who only appears in crisis, who needs your attention the way a drowning person needs air. Your silence terrifies them, because without your reaction, they are left alone with the emptiness they were trying to fill. The person who provokes you to feel powerful, your silence strips them bare, because their power was never real, it was borrowed from your response. The moment you stop lending it, they have nothing. And this is the part that will sting, so let it sting. When you go silent and someone becomes desperate, irritated, accusatory, when they suddenly say you've changed, you're cold, you think you're better than everyone, understand what is actually happening. They are not responding to who you are. They are responding to the loss of who they needed you to be. They are mourning the version of you that was always available, always reactive, always there to be moved. Your silence did not attack them. It simply stopped feeding something in them that was never your responsibility to feed. But silence is not only a weapon turned outward. If that is all it ever is for you, you have missed the entire point, and you will become cold, brittle, performative, a person playing at power instead of possessing it. The deepest function of silence is not what it does to them. It is what it does to you. And that is what we turn to now, because this is where silence stops being a strategy and becomes a transformation. This is where it becomes the language of the soul. There is a single process that the deepest psychology considered the true purpose of a human life. It is called individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are, not the mask you constructed to be accepted, not the role you learned to play to survive, but the whole, integrated, authentic self that has been buried under decades of performance. And individuation, the great inner explorers were clear, cannot happen in noise. Cannot happen while you are still turned outward, still reacting, still letting the world's voices drown out the one voice you most need to hear. It requires withdrawal. It requires silence. It requires what can only be called a kind of sacred isolation, not the depressive isolation of a person fleeing life, but the deliberate inward turn of a person finally ready to meet themselves. Think about how little of your life has actually been silent, truly silent, not the absence of other people, but the absence of the inner noise, the running commentary, the imagined arguments, the rehearsed explanations, the endless mental performance for an audience that is not even in the room. From the moment you wake, the noise begins, and you feed it all day with input, with reaction, with the compulsive need to fill every gap. And in all that noise, the deepest part of you, the part sometimes called the self, the center and the totality of the psyche, has been trying to speak to you your entire life. But it does not shout. It will never shout. It speaks in the quiet, in the spaces between, in the stillness you have spent your whole life avoiding. And so you have never heard it. There is more to that old line, and now you are ready for its full weight. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. This is not poetry. This is a precise description of a psychological reality. As long as your attention is poured outward, onto their opinions, their reactions, their approval, you are dreaming. You are sleepwalking through a life shaped entirely by forces outside you. And the only way to wake is to go silent long enough that the inner voice can finally be heard over the din. The silence is not empty. The silence is full. It is full of everything you have been too loud to notice. This is why solitude has always frightened people, and why the people who can bear it have always held a strange power over those who cannot. To be alone with yourself in real silence, with no one to react to and no one to perform for. This is one of the most demanding things a human being can do, because in that silence, everything you have been running from is finally able to catch up. The grief you never let yourself feel, the anger you swallowed, the fear that you are not enough, that you never were, that all the talking was just an attempt to outrun that single unbearable thought. It all rises in the silence. And most people, the moment they feel it rising, reach for the noise again. They pick up the phone. They start the argument. They fill the gap. Anything to avoid the descent. But you are not most people, or you would not still be here. So let me tell you what is on the other side of that descent, because this path has been mapped carefully, and it is the whole reason this difficult work is worth doing. On the other side of the silence is integration, the reclaiming of the parts of yourself you exiled, the slow, profound recognition that you do not need to be understood by everyone because you have finally begun to understand yourself, that you do not need to defend yourself against every accusation because you have stopped accusing yourself, that you do not need the world's reaction to confirm that you exist because you have made contact with the one part of you that was always real, always whole, always there beneath the noise. And here is something I need you to hear clearly, because the path I am describing is not free, and anyone who tells you it is free is selling you something. The descent into silence has a price, and you will pay it. We are going to talk about that price now, honestly, without softening it, because you deserve to know what this costs before you choose it. The people you will lose, the misunderstandings you will have to endure, the loneliness that comes before the wholeness. Most people turn back right here at the threshold of the price. Let's see if you are different. Here is the first thing the silence will cost you. People. Not all of them, but some, and some of them will be people you did not expect to lose. Because when you stop being endlessly available, when you stop reacting on command, when you stop pouring your energy into every relationship that asks for it, you will discover something painful. You will discover that some of the people in your life were never really with you. They were with your function. They were with the role you played, the listener, the fixer, the one who could always be moved, the one whose reactions made them feel powerful or needed or alive. And when you stop playing that role, they do not stay and meet the real you. They leave to find another version of who you used to be. This is brutal, and I will not pretend otherwise. You will watch relationships that you thought were solid simply dissolve the moment you stop feeding them with your reactivity. You will be called cold by people who only ever knew your warmth as something they could take. You will be called distant by people who were never actually close, only convenient. You will be accused of having changed by people who are really just mourning the loss of their control over you. And in the middle of all of it, a voice inside you will whisper that maybe they are right. Maybe you are being selfish. Maybe you are being too harsh. Maybe you should just go back to who you were, because at least then people stayed. There is a hard truth from the depth tradition. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And this is the terror right here in this moment of loss. Because to keep walking forward, to stay silent, to stay sovereign, to refuse to betray yourself just to keep someone comfortable, you have to accept that you are worth keeping even if they do not keep you. You have to accept that your peace is worth more than their approval. You have to accept yourself completely enough that their leaving does not unmake you. And almost no one is ready for that the first time. The pull to return to the old self, the available self, the loud and reactive and loved self, is enormous. Feels like love calling you home, but it is not love. It is the gravity of who you used to be, trying to drag you back down before you finish becoming who you are. The second cost is the misunderstanding, and this one lasts longer than the loss. Because when you go quiet, you surrender forever the ability to control what people think of you. The person who reacts to every accusation at least gets to fight the false story. But the person who stays silent has to let the false story exist. Has to let people believe the version of events that is convenient for them. Has to watch a distortion of who they are circulate among people who will never know the truth and do nothing. Say nothing. Defend nothing. This is almost unbearable for the part of you that has spent its whole life managing your image, curating how you are seen, performing the self you wanted others to believe in. But here is what the depth tradition understood, and what the silent few have always known. The need to correct every misunderstanding is itself a form of slavery. It means your peace depends on the accuracy of other people's thoughts about you. Thoughts you cannot control, will never control, and were never meant to control. The day you can let someone be wrong about you and feel no compulsion to fix it is the day you become genuinely free. Not because you stopped caring about truth, but because you stopped needing the world to agree with your truth in order to live in it. Your silence in the face of misunderstanding is not weakness. It is the loudest possible declaration that you no longer require anyone's permission to be who you are. And the third cost, the deepest one, is the loneliness that comes before the wholeness. Because there is a stretch of this path, and no one escapes it, where you have let go of the old, false connections but have not yet built the real ones. Where you have stopped performing, but the people who would love the real you have not arrived yet. Where the silence is no longer comfortable and not yet sacred. It is just empty and aching, and you wonder if you made a terrible mistake. This is the night before the dawn, and this passage has long been understood as a kind of death and rebirth, and the order is precise. The death comes first. The old self has to die before the new one can be born. And in between, there is a darkness that feels like it will never end. Most people cannot bear that darkness, and so they never reach what is on the other side of it. They feel the loneliness, mistake it for failure, and run back to the noise, back to the easy connections, the reactive relationships, the performance that at least filled the silence. And they spend the rest of their lives wondering why they feel so hollow even when they are surrounded by people. But you do not have to be one of them, because the loneliness of this passage is not a sign that you are lost. It is a sign that you are crossing, and what waits on the other side is not more loneliness. It is the first real solitude of your life, the solitude that does not ache because you are finally, fully at home with yourself. Now, before we go further, I have to draw a line that most people never see, and getting this line wrong will ruin everything we have built so far. Because there is a silence that frees you, and there is a silence that imprisons you, and they can look identical from the outside while being opposite in their nature. If you confuse them, you will think you are growing in power when you are actually just hiding. We have to separate the two right now, clearly and carefully, because your whole transformation depends on knowing the difference. There is a silence that comes from strength, and there is a silence that comes from fear, and they are worlds apart. The silence of fear is avoidance dressed up as wisdom. It is the person who does not speak because they are terrified of conflict, terrified of rejection, terrified of being seen, and who tells themselves a flattering story about being above it all, being too evolved to engage, choosing peace. But it is not peace. It is paralysis. It is the shadow running the show while the conscious mind congratulates itself on its restraint. This silence does not conserve your energy, it suffocates it. It does not make you sovereign, it makes you invisible. And the deepest tragedy is that the person trapped in it genuinely cannot tell the difference, because the fear has learned to speak in the language of strength. The silence of strength is something else entirely. It is not the inability to speak, it is the freedom to choose not to. And that distinction is everything. The person of true silence can speak fully, powerfully, devastatingly, at any moment they choose. They have the words, they have the courage. They could end the argument, defend the reputation, fire back at the insult, and they choose not to, not out of fear, but because they have weighed it and found it unworthy of their force. This is what is meant by integration. The angry part of you is not gone. It is conscious, acknowledged, and under your command. The defensive part of you is not suppressed. It is integrated, available, and held in reserve. You are not silent because you cannot fight. You are silent because you have become someone who chooses every battle and who refuses to spend a single unit of force on a war that does not matter. How do you tell which silence you are living in? There is a test, and it is honest and uncomfortable. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The silence of fear is unconscious. It happens to you. You find yourself unable to speak, and you do not know why, and you build a story afterward to explain it. The silence of strength is conscious. You feel the full pull to react. The anger, the defensiveness, the need to explain, You feel all of it completely, and then you choose with full awareness to let it pass. The fear-driven silent person never feels the pull because they have buried it. The strong silent person feels everything and masters it. One is numb, the other is sovereign. And the path from one to the other runs directly through the willingness to feel what you have been avoiding. So the practice is not to suppress your reactions. Hear me on this because it is the most misunderstood part of the entire path. The goal is not to become a person who feels nothing. That is not power, that is a wound pretending to be enlightenment. The goal is to feel everything fully, consciously, completely, and then to choose what you do with it. To let the anger rise and move through you without becoming your master. To feel the sting of the insult fully and still decide it does not deserve your voice. To notice the compulsion to explain yourself and recognize it as the old wound speaking, and to let it speak inside you without letting it speak through you. This is conscious silence. This is the silence that builds something, and it begins always with the courage to feel. And now we arrive at the part this entire journey has been building toward, the power that is born in the silence. Because everything we have talked about, all the cost and the loss and the descent, leads to a single transformation, and it is worth more than anything you gave up to reach it. Let me show you what you actually become on the other side of all this. When you have walked through the silence, paid its price, felt its loneliness, made its darkness conscious, something is born in you that cannot be born any other way. Presence. Not the performed presence of someone trying to be impressive, but the real thing, the gravity that the silent few carry into every room. You have felt it before, in the rare person who walks in and changes the air without saying a word. You always assumed they were born with it. They were not. They built it in the silence, by reclaiming all the energy they used to leak into the world and gathering it back into themselves until it became a kind of field around them that people could feel before they ever spoke. You become unreadable, and unreadable people cannot be controlled. When you stopped explaining yourself, you stopped handing people the map of your vulnerabilities. When you stopped reacting, you stopped confirming where your buttons were. When you stopped performing, you stopped showing people which mask to manipulate. And so they cannot reach you, not because you built a wall, but because there is nothing exposed for them to grip. The goal was always to become whole, not good, and the whole person, the integrated person, presents no handle to the world, because everything that was once dangling out for others to grab has been gathered back inside, owned, and made conscious. You are not defended. You are simply not available to be moved. And here is the strange paradox at the center of all of it, the thing that the loud will never understand. The less you reach for power, the more of it you have. The less you need the reaction, the more devastating your stillness becomes. The less you require the world's approval, the more the world finds itself drawn to you, working to earn the presence you no longer offer for free. The people who chase, who explain, who react, who perform, they will spend their whole lives reaching for a power that recedes the moment they grasp for it. And you, by simply going quiet and turning inward and refusing to betray yourself for a single reaction, will hold the one power that was never out there to be reached for because it was always only inside. As one of the great explorers of the inner world put it, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who they wanted you to be, not who you performed yourself into being to survive. Who you truly are, the whole, silent, sovereign self that has been waiting beneath all the noise for you to finally stop talking long enough to hear it. That self does not need to be understood by everyone. That self does not need to win every argument. That self does not need to fill the silence, because the silence is where it lives, where it speaks, where it is finally completely at home. And the day you meet that self is the day no one can ever take your power again, because it was never something they gave you, so it was never something they could take. So this is what I am asking you to do, starting today. starting in the very next moment someone reaches for your reaction. Go quiet. Not the silence of fear, the silence of strength. Feel the full pull to respond, to explain, to defend, to prove. Feel all of it, and then choose consciously to let it pass. Watch what happens in the space where your reaction used to be. Watch the other person reach for a button that no longer lights up. Watch the energy you used to give away stay, for the first time, inside you. And feel, maybe for the first time in your life, what it is to hold your own power instead of handing it out to everyone who asks. If this reached something real in you, if you felt the truth of it land somewhere the noise usually drowns out, then do something for me right now. Write in the comments these 3 words. I choose silence. Just that. Because putting it into language is the first act of making it conscious, and what becomes conscious can finally be lived. Let's see how many of us are ready to stop handing our power away. And if this video moved you, give it a like, not for me, but as a small signal to yourself that you are choosing the deeper path. And do not stop here, because this was only the first descent. The next video continues exactly where this one ends, into the deeper question of what you do once the silence has made you sovereign, and how to wield a power that no longer needs anyone's permission to exist. It is more important than you know. I will see you there.